The things people love most about dating Filipinas are oftentimes the same things that quietly destroy relationships. And almost no one talks about that part. And I've noticed that a lot of foreigners, come to the Philippines carrying a specific idea in their heads. Both heads. They've watched videos, they've read comments, scrolled through forums saying things like, Filipinas are the best wives, or dating in the Philippines is easy, or Filipinas will take care of you. And in my last video, I talked about why Filipinos often get that reputation. And why so many foreign men are drawn here looking for a long-term relationship. But if I stopped there, I wouldn't be doing anyone any favors. Because every culture has two sides, at least. And today we're talking about the other side. The reasons you shouldn't date a Filipina, or more accurately, the situations where dating a Filipina might realistically go wrong. This isn't an attack, and this isn't anti-Filipina. I'm a Filipino myself, and this is definitely not about short-term or transactional relationships. If someone's here for something casual and everyone's clear about it, nothing wrong with it, but that's a different conversation. This video is for people who say they want a real relationship, a real partner, a real life together, and then get blindsided by reality. Hi guys, it's Dee and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about why you shouldn't date a Filipina, the reasons, the nuances, and everything. But before that, please take a second to subscribe to my channel and hit the like button, especially if you like no-nonsense conversations like this. Now, as we start, let me be very clear again. Nothing I'm about to say applies to all Filipinas. None of these issues are exclusive to Filipinas. Every problem I'll talk about might exist in other countries too. And what culture does is increase the likelihood of certain patterns, and it doesn't guarantee outcomes. Just like not every Filipina is nurturing, not every Filipina is a good partner. Ignoring that truth is how people get hurt. Now let's start with the biggest shock for foreigners: family. And I've talked about this extensively in my previous videos, and you're probably tired of it. Because in many Western countries, dating is individual. You date the person, family exists, but it stays mostly on the sidelines. However, here in the Philippines, family is not on the sidelines, and I've said this many, many times. When you date a Filipina, you're often stepping into a family system, not just a relationship. Sometimes that system is warm and supportive, and other times it's heavy. Because family here isn't just emotional, it's a responsibility, it's obligation, and it's an expectation. And at first, it looks small. Helping here and there, being asked to contribute during emergencies, supporting a sibling, helping with medical bills, fixing things around the house, or yes, that water buffalo is sick again. But none of that is automatically wrong, but it could go wrong. Because the problem is when boundaries don't exist, when help becomes expected, when support becomes assumed, and when you slowly realize that the relationship isn't just you and her, it's you and everything she carries with her. And, let's be honest, as a foreigner, there's often this assumption that you have money, even when you don't, even when you're just getting by. And if she doesn't know how to say no to her family, you'll end up saying yes for both of you. And that kind of pressure doesn't explode overnight, it quietly wears people down, and it's very exhausting. Now let's talk about something foreigners completely sometimes misunderstand: communication. Specifically, tampo and saving face. In Filipino culture, direct confrontation is often avoided because, being blunt can feel disrespectful. Keeping harmony is prioritized here. So when someone is upset, instead of saying it directly, they withdraw, they fall silent, they go quiet, and they would expect you notice like you're a mind reader. And that's called tampo. Add saving face, which is avoiding embarrassment or conflict, and you get situations where someone says okay even though they're not okay. You agree when they don't even really agree. And this builds some resentment underneath everything. Because for foreigners used to direct communication, this can be brutal. You think things are fine. She thinks, things are already communicated without words. But this happens worldwide, I think. But here in the Philippines, it's a national sport. So problems don't get solved, they get stored, and months later the relationship collapses and the foreigners say, I had no idea this was coming. What feels like peace is sometimes just silence. Now, this part needs to be said plainly. Yes, some people lie. They lie about being married. They lie about having children. They lie about finances. They lie about intentions. And not all scams look obvious. Some relationships don't even start transactional, but it could slowly become that way. Love turns into an expectation, and expectation turns into an obligation, and obligation turns into resentment. And this isn't solely a Filipino problem, it's a human problem. But foreigners are easier targets because of the power imbalance, money, perceived opportunity, visas. Add savior energy and bad intentions, and the outcomes become predictable. White knights tend to finish last. If you walk into dating here naive, hoping love alone will protect you, you're setting yourself up to get hurt. I'm sorry. I don't make the rules. Even in non-scam relationships or non-transactional relationships, money is a major issue. In many Filipino families, sharing resources is normal. If someone has more, of course, they help more. It's not necessarily framed as exploitation, but it could come across that way. And where foreigners get hurt is when they never talk about it. They feel awkward, they don't want to look cheap, they don't want to offend her, so they keep helping, and helping becomes the baseline. It's normal in the surface. Then one day, they try to set a limit, and suddenly it's a problem. Because in her mind, this is how the relationship has worked for quite some time. And this is why money conversations have to happen early, calmly, respectfully, and clearly. And if money enters the relationship before boundaries, money will control the relationship. As I have said in my other videos, don't lead with your wallet. Now, this one doesn't really get talked about enough, and when it does, people get defensive. You can guess which ones get defensive. Many Filipinos, again, not all, have never been taught long-term financial planning. Budgeting exists, but it's often survival-based because money comes in, money goes out, and emergencies are constant. The focus is getting through the months, not building 5 or 10 years ahead. And saving feels optional, investing feels distant. Delayed gratification isn't always part of the mindset because growing up, there wasn't much to delay for. And that doesn't make someone irresponsible by default. A lot of it is learned behavior shaped by environment. But we also need to, of course, say the uncomfortable part. There are irresponsible women too. Some spend emotionally, some spend impulsively, and some feel entitled to upgrades the moment a foreigner enters the picture. Better phones, better clothes, constant shopping, lifestyle inflation without contribution or planning. Not because they're evil necessarily, there are, I'm sure, but it suddenly is a change that someone feels abundant because of the money they suddenly have. And if you're a foreigner thinking long-term, retirement, stability, shared goals, this mismatch will hurt you if you ignore it. Love doesn't fix financial incompatibility. And pretending spending habits don't matter is how resentment, of course, quietly grows. Now, the next one, at first, many foreigners love how attentive Filipinas can be. The messages, the check-ins, the closeness. And after years of emotionally distant dating cultures, it could feel refreshing. But sometimes that closeness turns into dependence. You become her emotional center, her stability, her reassurance, and suddenly her peace depends on your availability. Being needed feels good until it feels heavy. Now, I've also talked about this in my previous videos. Jealousy is very common here, and not always without reason. Sometimes without reason. There's insecurity, fear of abandonment, power imbalance, and past trauma. But unchecked jealousy doesn't stay as jealousy. It becomes control, phone checking, social media monitoring, suspicion of friends, and constant loyalty tests. Sometimes they would make another account with a different name and face and try to chat you to see if you take the bait. Trust me, they do that. Foreigners often mistake this for love. It's not always love. Sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's control, and you need to know the difference. Now, another shock for foreigners is how little privacy exists in some relationships here. Some Filipinos share everything with family. Your finances, your arguments, your plans, your personal business. And in a communal culture, that can feel normal, but in a relationship, it can be destructive. Next, cultural gaps don't just disappear. Even when a Filipino speaks excellent English, even when conversations feel easy at first, cultural misunderstandings still happen. Language fluency doesn't equal cultural fluency. Trust me, I know. Sarcasm is also a big one. In many Western culture, sarcasm is playful, normal, even affectionate sometimes. Here, it can land as a disrespect, mockery, or passive aggression, or sometimes she would just not get it. What you meant as a joke can quietly wound someone who was raised to value gentleness and emotional restraint. Directness is also another fault line. Saying things plainly, especially in moments of conflict, may feel honest and efficient to you, but to her, it can feel harsh, embarrassing, or unnecessarily confrontational. Tone matters more than content, and when tone feels too strong, the message gets lost. Then there's politeness, agreeing to avoid conflict, smiling to keep peace, saying okay when really she's not okay. And to foreigners, this could feel dishonest or manipulative, but to Filipinos, it's often a learned way of maintaining like harmony in relationships. So that is a very big conflict. Cultural wiring doesn't disappear with affections. It only softens when both people are willing to slow down, ask questions, clarify intent, and unlearn assumptions. Without that effort, small misunderstandings pile up until both sides feel unheard. And neither fully understands why. Now, for the last part, this could come across uncomfortable, but it needs to be said plainly. Dating a single mom in the Philippines is not just dating a woman with a child. It's stepping into a world or into a life that already has a routine, priorities, emotional history, and financial responsibilities that do not revolve around you. And sometimes it never will. The child comes first, always, not sometimes, not eventually. And if you're the type of man that needs to be the center of her world, this will quietly eat at you. Plans will get canceled, money will get redirected, attention will shift without warning, and if you resent that, even a little, you will become the problem. There's also the reality that many single mothers here are in survival mode. Some are incredible, responsible, and doing their best. Others are exhausted, financially stretched, and they're looking for stability more than romance. That doesn't automatically mean they're using you, but it does mean love and need can get blurred fast. And another hard truth, you will often be expected to help. School fees, medical needs, food emergencies, even if no one says it directly, the assumption hangs in the air. And once you step into that provider role, stepping back later will feel like abandonment to her and the child. Then there's the emotional weight. You're not just bonding with her, you're bonding with a child who didn't choose the situation. And if you leave, you're not just breaking up, you're disappearing from a child's life, and that's not something you should take lightly. And let's be very clear. If you're not prepared to potentially be a long-term presence, a provider, a protector, and a stable figure, don't do it. Curiosity, loneliness, or savior energy are not good enough reasons. Dating a Filipina may not work if you hate family involvement. You avoid emotional conversations. You want zero financial expectations. You need blunt communication. You dislike traditional dynamics. You won't enforce boundaries, and you're not very patient. And if you want a healthy relationship, you have to talk about money early, but of course, don't tell someone how much you're making every month or something. The first few months of talking, if ever, talk about family expectations, talk about jealousy, talk about boundaries, talk about long-term plans, because clarity beats chemistry all the time. And remember this, the right Filipina doesn't need saving, and the right foreigner doesn't need to rescue. Filipinas can be incredible partners, but not because of nationality, and not by default. What matters is character, compatibility, and mutual effort. If watching both videos made you uncomfortable, that's good, I think. That's discomfort, and that means you're thinking. Because cross-cultural dating isn't about finding the best woman. It's about building the right relationship the right way. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and if this resonated, don't forget to subscribe and feel free to join my channel memberships if you want to support more conversations like this. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Dee, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye! Situations where dating a Filipina might shouldn't date a Filipina before, and we both, ano, and massive defendants feel like the center of her world.